Great. That's great. Thank you very much. Great. So, hi, my name is Joy Davidson. I'm Associate Director with the Digital Curation Center, and I lead Work Package 2 in Fair Impact. And I can see there was a question saying somebody couldn't hear, but I'm hoping others can. Maybe if we can get a thumbs up if other people can hear. Perfect. That's great. So welcome to everyone. Today's session, what we're hoping to do in a maximum of an hour-long session is just to give you an introduction to the next round of support actions that we've put together for Route 2 support. And while these terms may be meaningless to you now, I'll give you a little bit of background on what they all mean in a few minutes. So just a reminder, you probably already had to accept that you know the session's being recorded, but just to remind you that we will be sharing this recording on the website for people who can't attend today, and maybe people who want to get a bit of information about what we talked about today. So if you don't want to be on screen, or please don't put your camera on or unmute. And you can also use the shared notes if you want to provide chat there. So that would be another place to put it without it being recorded. Before I go into the details of the support actions we have on offer today, I just wanted to give you again a little bit of background about the Fair Impact Project. We are one of the InfraEOS projects, and we have been working since June 2022, and we'll run until May 2025. We're coordination support action, and we are about 28 partners across the many of the EU states, and also including the UK, which is where I'm based. The main objective for Fair Impact, as a support action, we really are trying to help people to implement FAIR into their daily practices. So we're working to try and target the activities of different stakeholders, including people at the national level, people who work in research performing organizations, and also people who work at the repository and data service levels. So we're working to target a bunch of different stakeholders. And the key actions we have are trying to identify those kind of tools and approaches that are already available that people can start to use now. And our first support actions shared a couple of those for people to try. Another strand of activity for us is trying to translate different solutions that have been created for one context and helping them to be taken up in another context. And we'll have one offer related to that today. And the third is really trying to define governance and coordination mechanisms, and trying to come up with new recommendations and guidelines to help people to become more fair enabling in their daily practices. So those are the kind of key objectives we have in the project as a whole. I lead the work package that tries to deliver that support. And we have three different routes of support that we've come up with. One is called Route 1, and this is dedicated support and one-to-one support, where people who maybe are less advanced on their fair enabling journeys can work with us on a defined support program. And we have three of those underway at the moment, one targeted to national level initiatives, one targeted to research performing organizations, and one targeted to repositories. The Route 2, which is what I think you're all here today to learn about, which is our support through cascading grants. And this is where we give you a little bit of money to really help you to buy out some time to play around with different tools, try to start implementing them, and to get involved in trying to implement a particular solution or approach. So that's what you're all here for today. But I also wanted to make clear that we have a third route of support, and that is through a series of public fair implementation workshops. These began in late autumn last year, and they'll run throughout the duration of the project. So for today's session, I'm going to focus on introducing all of the five Route 2 support actions that we've come up with. And these are targeted towards some of the different stakeholders we're trying to target. And we'll spend a little bit of time giving a brief overview. And I guess it's probably important for me to stress that we're not going to go into a really deep dive on the support offers. There are links to the dedicated web pages where you can go and learn a lot more information. This session will give you a high-level introduction to the support actions and a bit of an idea of who should be applying to each one of them and what you can hope to get out of it. So without further ado, I will go in sequential order with the support actions we have available. If you do have questions, feel free to put them into the chat or put them into the shared notes, and we will hopefully have a bit of time left over at the end where we can come back to any questions. So the first support action we have is to support the fairness of research software. Software is a really crucial output, and it should be given the same respect and care that other research outputs have, like publications and data sets. So this support action is really all about trying to make sure that we can help people to think about how to look after their software as they're developing it, trying to think about it from the start, so building FAIR into the design of research software, and also then thinking about how you can improve the fairness of software over time. So there are two distinct paths that we're offering under this broad heading of research software. The first one is giving people a chance to work with a newly developed version of a tool called Fuji. Fuji is a fairly well-established fairness assessment tool. It was developed to start helping people to assess the fairness of data sets. It's been in use now for a good couple of years. It came through the Fair is Fair project. And we have been working in Fair Impact to develop a specific version of this software to integrate some metrics that have been developed in Fair Impact to assess the fairness of research software. So this is a new tool. It's just in its beta version now. And the key aim for this support action is to give people a chance to test out the tool and to see what kind of metrics have been included within it to start to assess the fairness of research software. As it is a new tool, and this is work in progress for Fair Impact, a key emphasis of this support action is going to be getting your feedback. So a lot of what we're trying to do with the financial support here is to give you a good chance to play around with the tools and to engage with the mentors, but also to really provide that bi-directional feedback and help us to improve both the metrics and the tool as a result of your participation. So people who should apply to this particular research support action are people who are developers, people who have software, and a key feature is that we want people who have software that is used outside of their particular user groups. So people who may have their software in a repository such as GitHub, and that's a prerequisite for participation in this. We need people who have this kind of ability to share their software through a repository. So we would say it's not particularly suitable to beginners, but more people who are advanced and have that ability to join the action and start with a repository of software that they can start to assess. During the support action, you will get mentoring from our colleagues at the Software Sustainability Institute at EPCC in Edinburgh. And we will provide 4,000 euros to help people to take part in the support action. This particular support action is still in development. So while all of the other ones have live websites that we can point you to, the details of this one are just being finalized, the two support actions for the software. So we will give you the links to these more detailed descriptions later on in the week. The second support action that we have related to research software is to help people to test out research software metadata guidelines that have been produced through the Fair Impact project. And this, again, is very much a work in progress. These are new guidelines that have been developed in the project, and we are looking to get people to try to implement the guidelines in a practical sense. So again, this particular support action is very much bi-directional in terms of you'll get some guidance from the mentors on the recommendations and how you might want to use them, but the emphasis is really then on trying to get some feedback from the participants on their experience on implementing the guidelines. So it's very much a two-way process for these two support actions related to software. For people who do join this one, you'll be working with some mentors from Software Heritage, who are the ones who have developed the guidelines with colleagues in Fair Impact. And we anticipate a little bit more time will be needed to take part in this one. We would assume about 6,000 euros would be needed to facilitate the taking part in this. So it'd be about 12 days worth of effort, we would assume, and that would take place between May and September this year. So again, further details of both of these software-related actions will be added later this week, but for all of the other ones that I'm going to present now, the information's on the website and you'll have the links. So the third offer is two here because the first one is part A and part B, I guess. So the next offer that we want to introduce to you is an action where people can get involved with us to start looking at European Open Science Cloud compliant persistent identifier policies. So persistent identifiers play a really crucial role in realizing the vision of the European Open Science Cloud and in supporting the realization of fair research outputs. There's lots of different kinds of identifiers in use and lots of different things that these identifiers actually identify. So it can be data, it can be various actors in the research lifecycle, it can be organizations and funders and all the rest. So it covers quite a lot, and really to ensure, that we're all working towards the same objectives. There's a need to have persistent identifier policies to really start to govern how these different identifiers are being used and what they're used to identify. Excuse me. As part of the support action, we are working really closely with our sister project, the Fair Core for EOS project, which is developing a number of different components to help realize the sort of minimum viable EOSC environment. One of the components of this is something called the Compliance Assessment Toolkit, and this has excuse me, been developed to help those people who are persistent identifier providers or managers or people who work in repositories that assign persistent identifiers. Is really about helping them to see if their services and their policies align with the EOSC persistent identifier policy, which came out back in 2020. So again, this is a very early beta version of the tool at the moment. It is hot off the presses, so people who join this support action will get a chance to work with this new version of the component and try to, again, feed into its future development. So a key aim for this, again, is trying to get some feedback on the tool. But we would also say that this is not just for people who are interested in contributing as service providers potentially to the European Open Science Cloud, but really anybody who might be considering whether they need a persistent identifier policy. So the support action will also give you a lot of time to look at different kinds of persistent identifier policies and to become familiar with the EOSC PID policy as well. And you'll get time to work with different support providers coming from SURF, CSC, DataCite, DANS, and DIKE. And these are all partners in both Fair Core for EOSC and the Fair Impact projects. So one of the things we will get you working on when you're part of the support action is to analyze the compliance assessment toolkit and provide some feedback. You will also hopefully help to identify any barriers that are encountered in terms of implementing an EOSC PID policy compliant solution. And your participation will hopefully mean that you become more familiar with new terms and concepts and are better able and ready to start to implement PID policies. As a result of your participation, we would expect you to go away with a deeper insight into formulating persistent identifier or related policies, both in terms of what they should cover and in terms of the format that they should follow. but also to have a better understanding of your own organization or services readiness to implement such a policy, and as part of the work, you'll undertake a self-assessment. If relevant, if you are one of the service providers who wants to become part of the EOSC marketplace, then we think that your participation in the support action will hopefully make that onboarding process a little bit easier too. So this particular support action will again run between May and September in 2024. We anticipate probably about 20 days worth of effort split between a series of virtual workshops and homework. And to support participation for these 20 days, we will give people 10,000 euros to help them to take part. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one. If the slides move. Oh, having difficulties with my screen. Oh, there we go. So we've got a new support offer here, which is deviating slightly again from the stakeholder groups that we were just talking about, which were developers and those who are providing PIDs. Now we're moving on to a support action that is targeted towards data repositories. And in this particular support action, we're looking at the theme of trustworthiness and fair enabling data repositories. And this has been a fairly hot topic for a while now. There has been an increased interest in having access to trustworthy repositories, and whether they're certified or deemed trustworthy in different ways. There are lots of different ways of thinking about it. So there's a lot of debate going on right now about what actually constitutes fair enabling and trustworthiness. But we can say there is broad agreement that being transparent about the repository service really does help to provide end users with the ability to make an informed decision about the services they use and whether they consider them to be trustworthy or not. So to that end, Fair Impact has been working over the past few months to develop some guidelines on how to improve the transparency and hopefully trustworthiness of data repositories. So in this particular support action, the people that are working with us will get a chance to be introduced to the guidelines and to consider how they would implement them, and get some guidance on how to make this happen in a real life setting. For those people who do apply and join us on this, we would expect that people will work between, again, May and September to analyze the Fair Impact guidelines, and again, to provide us with feedback on whether they are realistic or not, or where they might need improvement. So again, this is very much a two-way support action. You won't just be listening to us, we will be seeking your input. You will also receive guidance, though, from the mentors you're working with, and in this case, it'll be people from DANS, UKDS, KIT, and the University of Bremen. And they will give you some advice on how you might consider making information about your repository service more transparent, and helping you to think about how you would do that and what kind of information you might want to share. So you would hopefully leave this with a better understanding of how different kinds of information can help people to build pictures of trust in different kinds of repository services, and help them to make decisions about whether you are fair enabling or trustworthy. We would hope that you would also gain an understanding that implementing the guidelines will also help you to provide better discoverability of your service, provide more context about the environment you work in, and can help to support interoperability. For those who are interested, you would also have the chance to feature in the revision of the guidelines. So you would receive credit as a co-author in the new version of the guidelines, and that is something that may be of more interest to some potential applicants than others, but we think it's important that people get the credit for shaping the next version of the guidelines. So that is something that we would make clear in this particular support action. We would assume that you would need to spend about 8 days, again, between May and September this year on this particular support action. and there would be 4,000 euros available to help people to take part. The last of the support actions that we were wanting to introduce you to today is one that is targeted towards policymakers and people who are interested in monitoring the policy landscape. So over the last few years, there have been lots of efforts at different levels to develop fair enabling policies that will hopefully mean that the production and use of fair data becomes the norm in the European Open Science Cloud and more widely. To date, a lot of this work in trying to understand what the policy landscape looks like, it's very manual process, generally involving annual surveys that people complete, and it tends to report more at the national level and often misses some of the policies that are in place at the research performing organizational level and at research infrastructure level. So we're not sure that we're getting a full picture of the landscape at this point. So part of this particular support action will involve using existing infrastructure, which is fair sharing, which is a registry service that people can use to register not just policies, but also databases and standards, and can start to link all of these things up together. We will be making use of fair sharing to try and increase the number of policies that are included in the registry. Recently, Fair Sharing improved their metadata for the policies to try and provide greater clarity on the content of the policies. So trying to make clear different components, expectations, and this draws on work from the Fair is Fair project. So people who work in this particular support action will start to register policies. They'll coordinate the registration of policies either within their country, their region, or their domain community. And the idea is that we would hopefully at the end of this support action have a far greater number of policies registered with fair sharing, and that data then can be pulled back out and made more useful to anybody who's interested in seeing how the policy landscape is evolving over time. So for this one, we are looking to work with people who are, either working formally or informally at the national domain community level, but it could also be at the regional level or international levels. We're quite flexible in how people want to come into this. So we are willing to accept different suggestions here. You'll be working with mentors from DCC and Fair Sharing during this. And we would anticipate that this will require about 8 days worth of effort again between May and September, and you would get 4,000 euros to support your participation in that particular support action. So that is a very high-level overview of what you can expect to see on offer. If any of these are of interest to you, please do follow the links that are in the slides. And I think you already have access to the slides, so you can go ahead and start looking at these in a bit more detail. Each of the web pages has more information on the specific number of workshops that you might be expected to attend, the timing of the delivery, and the homework that you might be expected to participate in between the virtual workshops. So just a summary here of what you can expect to get if you participate in one of these support programs. What you can expect to get from us is support from the mentors. I think it's probably worth making clear here that it is not on-demand support in many cases. The financial support that we give to people is really to give them the time to delve into a lot of these tools on their own and to kind of learn through doing. So there is support. It tends to be run through set office hours and similar kind of structured times where people can come and ask questions, but we also hope to allow people to learn from each other. So there's a very strong emphasis on encouraging the participants within the support actions to communicate with each other and to learn from each other when they go through the actions. So they will have the 3 or 4 virtual workshops, whatever the number is for each of the support actions, that brings them all together. They'll get the dedicated hands-on advice there, and in between they'll have the office hours. Also within this current tranche of the support actions, you will have the opportunity to really help shape these emerging tools, the recommendations and the guidelines. So a lot of these, as I mentioned, are works in progress. And we're looking right now to get people feeding in at the earliest stages so that we can make sure that they are particularly useful as we get towards the later stages of the project. As I mentioned, you will get financial support to enable your participation. The financial support is based on a flat day rate of 500 euros a day. And that is worked out with the support providers to kind of get a sense of how many of the virtual workshops you'll have to attend and how much homework you'll have to do in between. So the financial support is there to help you to take part. It's probably worth noting that you may do a little bit more or a little bit less than the number of days we anticipate. It's not meant to completely buy out your time, but really to try and help give you momentum maybe for doing something that you had wanted to do anyway, but found difficult to put to the top of your to-do list. So the financial support in many ways is just there to help kind of grease the wheels and give you a good excuse to get started. I think it's also worth making clear here that the financial support is only there to support the staff time. It's not there to help you to do anything else. So it is just to secure the time of the participants in the support action. And the last point here is really, again, we really want to encourage peer-to-peer knowledge transfer and the sharing of experiences. So in the first round of support actions that just finished up in November last year, we found that that was a really good experience, and that people who took part in the Fairness Assessment Challenge and the Fair Sign Posting and RO Crate support actions that we offered in the last round, people really did value the opportunity to share knowledge with their peers and to learn from each other. So that is certainly something that we'll be keeping in these support actions. So what do we expect of people who take part? The details, again, will be listed on each of the individual support actions for any specific requirements expected of participants with regards to skills. But in general, what we really want to see in your applications is that you are ready to implement, adopt, or use this specific tool or approach. We want to know that you're willing and able to participate in an active way in the workshops. These could be hackathons, they could be meetings, but the variety of meetings that we're putting together for the support actions, we want people to take part and to take part in an engaged way. We will all be doing the meetings virtually. So again, it's just to make clear there is no travel required for any of these. It is all to be held virtually. As I mentioned, there is an expectation that people will be able to work independently. So you will get guidance at various points throughout the support action, but we also expect you to be able to work independently and to do the required homework in between the workshops. If there is any particular technical specifications or skills that you have to participate, that will be made clear in the specifications for the call, and in the application we would expect you to be able to tick that you confirm that you meet those specifications. The last 2 points here, we don't want to lose touch with you as soon as the support actions wrap up. So we would also ask that you are willing to participate in some very brief follow-up questionnaires or possibly interviews over the next 18 months. They'll be kept to a minimum, but it is just so that we can maybe follow up and find out from you what your participation in the support actions has helped you to do, and maybe if you've used it to help start new activities. The other thing is that there is a mandatory exit interview that people have to take part in, and that is used to form the basis of what we call a fair implementation story. This is just a very brief, structured way of being able to share the experiences of the different participants, so that hopefully we can share the knowledge of your participation and package it up and make it available to others to be able to learn and hopefully avoid any mistakes or take advantage of any tips that you might have. So these are co-authored. You will get credit as an author on these stories, and they're published to Zenodo. Who can apply? Because this is a financial support program, we are bound by the European Commission rules on this. We must insist that you work and reside in an EU or associated country for the duration of the support program. And if you check the website, we have all of the links to the European Commission guidance on what the current list of EU and associated countries are. I know we've had some questions that we're following up now about the eligibility of Canada, since there's a recent inclusion of Canada as an associated country. So we're working on getting an answer for that, and we'll add it to the FAQs as soon as we get that information. But I wanted to make clear here that this call, all of the support programs and actions we've just mentioned, are open not just to organizations, but also to individuals. One thing we found is that it can be difficult for an organization to want to maybe go through all the hoops to get 3,000 or 4,000 euros in. So we are quite happy to get applications from individuals who work within organizations, and they can be paid on an individual capacity. So it's important to make sure that you're aware that you can go under an organization or as an individual. It's up to you to make that decision. We have a list here of the kinds of organizations we want to work with. It's not the only people we'll consider, but these are our main target stakeholders. So research performing organizations and research infrastructures, repositories, data and metadata service providers, and representatives of national and international level initiatives. But again, if you don't fit into these categories and you think you want to apply, please get in touch, and we're happy to give you some advice. I wanted to make you aware that we do have some frequently asked questions. I've put here at the top, do I need to apply through my organization? And again, just to make clear, you are perfectly able to apply as an individual for these calls. So if the organization perhaps isn't thrilled by the thought of paperwork to do a small grant, then that might be a route for you to consider. The other one I wanted to pick up here as a frequently asked question is, can I apply for more than one of these support actions? And I think this is particularly maybe for those people who might have been successful in the first open call and taken part in the Fairness Assessment Challenge or the RO Crate and signposting action. The answer is yes. We don't have a limit on how many of these support actions you can apply to join. We do have an upper limit of 10,000 euros that we will give to any particular applicant or group that is applying. So, for example, if somebody was involved in the Fairness Assessment Challenge, which offered 2,500 euros, and you wanted to go for the PID policy one, we would subtract the 2,500 from the 10,000 that you'd be eligible to receive. So please do consider applying if you've already applied for one, but you've spotted some support actions that you think are interesting, then consider applying, but be aware that as soon as we get to that 10,000 limit, we will have to kind of work out how that works. There would also be potential, I think, for people to maybe take part as observers, but we would have to kind of look into that on a case-by-case basis. So again, if you don't see any questions in here that cover what you need to know, we do have a dedicated email address, and it's on the final slide, so you can take note of that if you don't find the answer to any questions in this list. So I wanted to cover quickly the application process for people who maybe haven't come to apply to any of our support actions before. We do everything online. So we use something called the Trust Grants platform, and you access it through the Fair Impact website. And just to make you aware that you will have to sign up for a Fair Impact website user account to be able to access the Trust Grants platform. Once you do get into the platform, you will come to a dashboard that looks similar to this. And you will see the available support actions that you can apply to. They will be in blue. The ones that are closed will be in red, but you can just click apply now to each of the ones that you're interested in joining, and then there is a step-by-step application process that you would fill out. So one thing I wanted to make you aware of is that we've tried to keep the application process to a minimum. We know that, you know, people struggle sometimes to write very long applications, and to the burden can be quite significant. So we've tried to keep it to a minimum, just focusing on really the important questions that we want to ask you. Most of the questions we really want your input on are to help us get a sense of who you are. So a bit of profiling about you and your organization. And also most of the kind of open-ended texts that we're asking you to provide are really about what you think you'll get out of it and how you will make use of your participation. So what kind of potential impact might come out of your participation. So it is meant to be a fairly brief form. We're not asking for lots and lots of information. So it shouldn't be too difficult for you to complete. We have enabled you to kind of work on this incrementally though. So if you do start your application, you can save it as a draft and return to it. You don't have to do it all at the one time. One thing I would say, if you do save it as a draft and plan to come back to it, please make sure that you click submit by the deadline. Don't forget to do that final step. Once the deadline's done, 3 reviewers will be assigned to each application, who will work independently to read through the applications and score them independently, and then there will be consensus to try and reach a shared view of the scores that were provided. So it's very much a clear and kind of standard process that we're using here for the evaluation. So I think at this point, I just wanted to open it up and see if there's any questions that people have. I don't know if there's been any questions in the chat or if people want to raise their hand. We have a few minutes if people would like to ask any specific questions.
There's a couple of questions in the chat, Joy,
Okay.
in the notes. So we have one from Maureen. Can we apply for number 3, even though we as a data repository are still awaiting the results from Core Trust Seal to certify our repository?
Yeah, I would say, Maureen, that certainly seems fine, because we're looking at trustworthiness in a kind of a broader capacity from just Core Trust Seal or certified status. Yeah, I think we're looking for different views, and it could be interesting to see how maybe different repositories at different levels of maturity can apply. So I would say absolutely.
And there's another question from Ilari. What do you expect from a data repository to be considered a successful applicant for number 2?
I think we just, again, really want to know that you're going to engage with the process, that you will be willing to really take a look at the guidelines and consider how you would implement them, to make use of the time you have with the mentors to try and take on some aspects of good practice. And ideally, what we'd like to see in the applications is that you will apply what you've learned. We're not looking for massive changes. I think there's a question that really asks you about what do you envisage doing as a result of your participation, or what do you think you'll take away from it. It's important to stress here, we're not looking for people to, you know, work miracles. You're getting a small amount of money to do some fairly targeted work. What we really want to see here are realistic and achievable things that you can take forward. So it may be a small thing that you're planning to do. You might just want to work to make some aspect of your policy clearer and to make this more visible on your website somehow. So I think it's really, it's hard to say what we're looking for, but what we do want to see is evidence that you will take the lessons that you've learned and be able to apply them in some practical way. So hopefully that clears it up a little bit. But there's no real standard what we're looking for here. It is just evidence that you're willing to apply what you're learning. So I don't see any other questions in the chat. I don't know if anybody else has any that you'd like to ask at this point.
Yeah, I do have a question if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So I saw the link in chat to the Horizon Europe participating countries. I personally am based in the United States and am a United States citizen.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I couldn't open the PDF, so just wanted to
Okay.
quickly check and see if that's okay. But I do work for a Swiss company. So can the application be on behalf of a US resident working for a Swiss company?
This might be one we will probably need to take it to our project officer, our European Commission project officer, just to clarify if that's okay. But I think if your organization is based in Switzerland and you're going through the organization, that should be fine. I believe we said that you should reside in a European country as well. But I think we can take that forward with our project officer just to clarify. So maybe get in touch with me after this, and we'll follow it up and let you know.
Sure, more than happy to. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's interesting because we all work in such a changed way now since the pandemic. Everybody's kind of virtual in different parts of the world, and you might not be in the same country as where your organization is based. So we're still trying to work out the subtle nuances with the Commission's guidelines on this, but we will take it forward. So I don't know if any other questions people might have. Quick look at the document. I don't see anything else in the document. Okay, well, I think I will just maybe move on then back to the slide deck. I won't keep you too long then. We might be able to wrap up a little bit early and give you back 15 minutes of your day. I just wanted to remind you of some key dates. So the 3 of the support actions are open for applications now. So the call has officially launched today, January 31st. The 2 related to software, as I mentioned, are just being finalized this week, and we should have the details up on the website by the end of this week. We will tag on a couple of extra days for the deadline for that particular call. The calls to align with the European Commission guidelines will be open for 2 months. So you have plenty of time to be able to kind of start your application and think through which of the support actions look most useful for you. As I mentioned, you can't apply to more than one. When we're selecting, we'll be trying to get a good kind of balance between the applicants and make sure that we're getting good representation. But by all means, if there's more than one that is of interest, feel free to apply for more than one. The deadline will be March 31st. As I mentioned, we'll probably give a few more days for the research software related actions, but probably not too much more than a couple of days. What we will be doing is running a virtual clinic, which is maybe a bit more formal sounding than it's meant to be. It's an informal drop-in session, really at the halfway mark from launching the open call to the deadline. And this is really where you can come in and ask more specific questions about your application and each of the support actions that you might be interested in applying for. So the date for this hasn't been set yet, but it will be early March. And we will have the support providers on hand to answer any questions that you have and to give you some advice on anything that isn't clear. So keep checking the website for that, and we will make a note to let everybody who registered for today's session know when that virtual clinic has been set, and you can start to register for that. The timeline for the evaluation, so the deadline will be 31st of March. And we will be doing the evaluation through April. We've given ourselves a little bit of leeway. It may go into early May, just depending on the number of applications we receive. But the intention is to notify everybody of the outcomes by the middle of May. The support actions themselves, as I said, should start late May or early June and run through to September. So those are the kind of key dates to keep in mind. And hopefully they'll work for you, and you can, keep your eyes open for the virtual clinic as it comes up. The one last thing I just wanted to alert people to, I mentioned that we have public fair implementation workshops, and this is a series of workshops that we offer as part of our Route 3 support, and these are free and open to anyone to register to watch. They're about an hour long generally, and they give you an introduction to some fair enabling practices that are taking place. We do have one coming up later this week, which is looking to share information on a fair national plan that has been developed in Germany and some national initiatives that are taking place in Romania to support the adoption of the FAIR principles. So if you're interested in that particular event or any of the other workshops that are coming up, take a look at the link and you can register for any or all that might be of interest to you. And with that, I'll just say thank you very much for joining us today. And we hope that some of these support actions have been of interest to you. And if you do have any questions, you can get in touch with us through open calls at fairimpact.eu. You can check our FAQs and see if you can find the answer there first, but if not, definitely get in touch with us. And for those with the questions on eligibility, we will try to follow them up and get you some advice in the next week or so. So thank you very much to everybody who's joined, and we hope to see some applications coming in from you over the next month or so. So thanks very much.